Hello friends, welcome to my channel Sushant Chess Quiz. Today we are at the next topic, that is the King and Pawn Endgames, and we are at the 7th position of our topic. Today we have got a combined position that is based on two ideas. One, we can see our previous topic, white has got a protected passer, and the second concept which we will have to use here is the concept of coordinate squares and the corresponding squares. If we calculate a bit, we will get the set of squares where the kings need to be in order to hold the game. Right now we see first set of squares. Whenever white king is on f4, black king has to be on f6. Similarly, we can find the other set of squares. First, let us understand why the king has to be on f6 when the king is on f4. Let's say this is the position with black's move. Then black will have to go away to the g6 square, because he has to keep the f5 pawn protected. But as soon as kg6 is played, white uses the tactic e7. When after kf7, kf5, ke7, we have discussed this position before. Whenever the pawns are in front of each other, the squares next to these three are the key squares, and similarly these three are the. So as soon as the king enters to the key squares, he wins the pawn on d6 by force and wins the game. Secondly, we also know by now that in case of protected passer, one rule is we see the magic square of the pawn, which is the protected pawn, and the king is well in that. So if f pawn is lost, with this respect black can hold the game. But on the other side there are two squares from where white can enter, and this entry cannot be stopped by black. So that is the problem here. Black cannot give up the f pawn and hold the game. So let's find out the other coordinate squares. So when king goes to g3, the square is g7. So the joining square to these two are f3. For f3 the square is g6. We note one more fact, that whenever white king goes to h4 via g3, that time to kh4 black needs the move kg6. He cannot be on h6 because then e7 wins. He cannot be on g7 because king g5 loses, and he cannot be on f6 because kh5 again loses. So this is another very important set, g6 and h4. So this makes black's task very difficult. White uses a very simple technique. He sees that the f3 and h3 squares are far away. Similarly to g6 there is h4. So whenever the king is on h3, the black king has to find a suitable spot. And to join f3 and h3, there is the g2 square, where white retreats, and seeing the black king movement to whichever square, to g7, g6 or f6, white king can decide from the g2 square where to go, and white wins the game. Let's see how. King f3, kg6 forced. If kg7, then kg3, and we see that to king g6, king h4, and black is caught in a zugzwang. So he plays kg6 here, white goes kg2, and now black is in real trouble. The problem is, where should he move now? To g7 there is kg3, and black is in zugzwang. He can't go to h6 because of e7. Similar are g3 and h5. So he has to go to the f6 square. Now kf3 again is repetition by kg6, but the white king uses the h3 square, and now this time black is in trouble, because as soon as he goes kg6, there is kh4. Giving up the pawn doesn't help. I told you the king will enter from the queen side, and the move king f6, king h5 again costs the pawn, because now kg7 or ke7 both allow kg5, and the f pawn would be taken. Thus, after kh3, now the f6 king has to go to the square g7, and we see that white takes the distant opposition from the square g3. Not only that, he will now move to that square wherever black is more uncomfortably placed. For instance, if kg6, then just kh4, it's game over, and after kf6 he goes kf4. We get the starting position again with black to play, and as we discussed, after kg6, e7, kf7, king f5, ke7, kg6, it's game over. So basically, if we want to summarize, we can say to these four squares, black had only three, and that is where the trouble was lying. The position looked very complicated at first, but if we break it down systematically, solving becomes easy. I hope you are finding these lessons useful. Do like, share and subscribe the channel. Thanks for your time.